We have a super duper guest here.
We do, and to start off this new year, to start with what is often end of life stuff for people seems a little, but it's the Bedford VA, the Edith Norse Rogers Memorial Veterans Administration Hospital on Springs Road. And our guest is
Karen Butnick.
Yes,
thank you.
And Karen and I have worked together. I was a volunteer there for, full disclosure, volunteer there for 6 years and over 1,000 hours of volunteering work.
Wow.
And I work with Karen almost every day. We connected with each other.
And so you've been at the hospice program for a while.
Yes, I've been at the VA 10 years. I specifically came to work in the hospice program, which is my passion, and I'm still at the David James Hospice Program and still very passionate about end-of-life care and serving our veterans.
Fabulous. So now we have Edith Norse Rogers, who was a congresswoman, one of the first congresswomen in the United States who represented Bedford and for whom the hospital was named. And now we have another name, David James. Who was David James?
So David James was our palliative care coordinator. The program started with seed money from the Central VA office back in 2009, which is how I was recruited from Naples, Florida.
Oh. Whoa!
Yeah.
And you left all that beautiful weather to come up here. Good for you. Welcome.
Well, I think you can see I enjoy wearing
I love it. Fabulous. That's absolutely fabulous.
So David James was one of the individuals that interviewed me to come to the Bedford VA hospice program. And he was instrumental. He was really the visionary for the program that we have today. And we subscribe to a philosophy of veteran-centered care. We subscribe to a philosophy of being passionate, offering quality of life, offering choice, offering the veteran and the family to honor their voice. And we want to make them feel comfortable. We want them to feel loved, supported, and to have everything they need to have a good end-of-life experience. So David was instrumental in seeing that this would happen. And very tragically and unexpectedly, he died. He died May 2014. Our unit opened October 2014, and as a tribute and a way to honor him, we named the unit after him and our program, and it's the David James Hospice Unit, the David James Hospice No Veteran Dies Alone program.
Fabulous.
And it's in Building 2.
In Building 2, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
It's really I was there when it was all under construction. It was a pretty mixed up time. And because there was an awful lot of work they went through to get it just right. And David was right in on top of he designed it. He was involved with all the setup. And it's just unbelievable the work he put in on that.
I love it. So what makes the David James Hospice Unit different from programs at any of the various different nursing homes around Bedford?
So I would say
apart from the fact that it is limited to veterans care.
I would say there's dramatic differences in our program. And if you ask me specifically one is what Ralph just alluded to. The David James Hospice Unit has been completely redesigned. It's state-of-the-art with private rooms, private baths. We have the full complement of services with a doctor on the unit. We have a charge nurse, we have a nurse manager, we have rec therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, we have psychology, we have chaplaincy, we have our Hospice No Veteran Dies Alone volunteer program, we have hospice volunteers that visit regularly on the unit to support the veterans with socialization, quality of life. And the key difference is that we have our own federal pot of monies. We're not driven specifically by Medicare. The community providers, their primary source of reimbursement is Medicare. We are our own federal entity.
Oh, wow.
And we have like what I call a hybrid. You don't have to come and be end of life actively dying. We can get a veteran that is, not so near and can really have a lot of time to form relationships with other veterans, with staff, rekindle with other family and friends that he may have lost contact with, and really see that it's a time to celebrate one's life, and it's not just focused on the sadness and the grief that comes with aging and end of life or having a chronic life-limiting illness.
And there's also the family room space, so it's a very welcoming space, absolutely.
Ralph is right about that. When Ralph is right, we have a media room, we have a conference room, we have a dining room, we have many events. One of the things that I would like to share that we had recently is that we have the DAV, the Disabled American Vets.
Oh, they are wonderful. I remember working with them. What a hoot.
Well, these are veterans that are disabled, and
Yep.
they come together, and we have the DAV Hospice Helpers. And what they specifically do is that they will come for like Thanksgiving,
Yep.
they will come for DAV Day. We had a Halloween event, and all of the DAV Hospice Helpers got dressed up in Halloween garb. They had this fabulous Italian Greek meal. All the veterans and families were invited, and they literally bring everyone together, and we have this festive meal. Everyone gathers around, shares stories, the families feel loved, and then we visit the rooms, and we'll do a variety of different things, and we bring them gifts, we bring them chocolates, and this is all sponsored by the DAV Hospice Helpers. It's pretty amazing.
Whoa.
You know what the best part? Every time the DAV group shows up around Christmas time, the Santa Claus shows up too.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, they
Never
are
too
really
old for
good.
Santa Claus.
I agree with that.
Never too old for Santa
I
Claus.
agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
Absolutely not. So one of the things you said was that it takes a village to raise a child. It really sounds as though a village gets involved in end-of-life care out on Springs Road.
Yes, yes, and that's the beauty of our geriatric hospice program. It's the beauty of our geriatric programs at the Bedford VA. Think of how many individuals it took to raise the child, and the child was nurtured, loved, supported. You had laughter, and it's the same thing as a geriatric veteran or as a hospice veteran. We welcome you. We want to celebrate who you are, what your life was about. We want you to feel welcomed. We want you to continue to do the things that you like to do, whether it's to play bingo, cribbage, whether it's to write poetry, whether it's to paint, whether it's to, we had one veteran, a woman veteran who celebrated her 95th birthday, and she loved Paris. And so what we did is that we had an afternoon in Paris to celebrate.
So
And it was
good.
just amazing. And we had a mime, and we had French pastry, and we had French music, and it was really delightful.
How does one become a volunteer on this unit? It sounds like a wonderful place to be.
Well, I agree. I agree with you. And the volunteers, what you do is that you go through Laurel Holland, who is our
Yeah.
Chief of Voluntary Services.
Yeah.
You can go online and fill
So
out.
when Laurel sees that, I'm going to get a telephone call. I know
Yes.
it. Hi, Laurel. How are you?
So Laurel is amazing as our Chief of Voluntary Services. The Bedford VA is very user-friendly. We welcome volunteers to come.
Hey, they welcomed me to be a volunteer, so
Well, I
if I
understand-
can do it, anybody can
I
do it.
understand that you and Art Smith were both very good hospice
Art was
volunteers.
there. Yeah, there were a lot of us over there. Matter of fact, I was surprised at how many Bedford friends were there. It was.
There you go.
So you go through Laurel and
Yeah.
you fill out all the necessary paperwork, and then what you do is then you come for a second interview
Yeah.
to express your interest in hospice, because it really is a unique area to volunteer. We want to just find out a little bit more about you and your interest and your comfort with end-of-life care,
Yeah.
being at the bedside of a veteran who's actively dying. And then we go through an orientation process, we go through an education process, and we have monthly support groups. We have No Veteran Dies Alone support groups. It's very rich in education and support, so that you as the volunteer feel your needs are being met, that you're being nurtured and supported as well, and also the veteran is getting what he or she may need too. It's a win-win for both to come and volunteer at the Bedford VA.
Actually, I was really scared about the hospice unit, and I was first lined up in the palliative care section. And I just got graduated right into the group. It was a natural transition, and it was perfect. And I used to say to Joe Dooley, who was the volunteer specialist in those days, and I said, Joe, you know something? This is the best job I've ever had. I'm not even getting paid for it.
I think it's an opportunity to make a difference in the life of a veteran. It's an opportunity to make a difference in the life of our families. For our No Veteran Dies Alone program, which is bedside vigil at the bedside of a dying veteran, the families will also come back and say, you know, I can't thank the volunteers enough. They gave me the opportunity to go home, have a few hours sleep or shower or run errands and know that my dad would not be alone.
Yeah.
And I know my father would want that. And it's the ministry of presence, the presence of self, it's silent support. It could be even reading or just listening to the veterans' favorite tunes. It's just a win-win, and some of our best volunteers are veterans themselves. Many veterans that have retired
a lot
come
of them
back.
are, yes.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are. I was the only one that wasn't a veteran. They used to kind of tease me, oh, you weren't a veteran. You don't know what the real story is. But the best part was, and I felt a little selfish about this, they wanted to tell me all their stories. This was their chance to tell me what they went through and some of the things they had. And I just was totally amazed and impressed. They just enriched my life tremendously. Yeah.
I actually agree with you. I think it's one of the gifts. You know, many individuals I meet will say, well, how do you do it? How do you sustain the 10 years? How do you continue to be so passionate about end-of-life care? And I will say, you have no idea how many gifts I have received.
Yeah.
You have no idea how rich my heart is in love. It's my gift to them. Yes, the VA, it's my job, but
That's
you
their
can't
gift, right
imagine
straight
what
back.
they have given back to me.
They want to share those stories, their experience in Vietnam or in
World
this
War
case,
II.
it was
Yeah.
World War II. We had some and some Korean War ones. They wanted me to absolutely know what they went through, and they told the whole story. I went, wow, you did that. The only saving grace I had was my brother was in the Marine Corps, so they said, oh, if he was a Marine, you're okay. But
Well, there you go.
But it was just phenomenal with the stories we got from those soldiers.
Well,
Yep.
the power of story is not to be messed with.
Yep.
I mean, if more people told more stories, I think there would be fewer difficulties in this world because we would learn more about others. They would have a chance to tell what is important to them, and we would have a chance to maybe evaluate it in ways that sometimes get sort of shortchanged when we don't go into the power of story.
Yeah, but we all felt very comfortable just chatting away. It's just a wonderful opportunity. And if anybody has a chance to volunteer,
There
best
you go.
job ever.
Call Laurel Holland at the VA as
And
she
Karen
does.
will be there to help you too.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So you've had weddings on the hospice unit?
Yes, yes,
That one,
yes.
I'm not going to argue. I think it's absolutely fabulous, but how did that come about?
So actually, when you were telling about stories, so one of the veterans, he was a Marine. He served in Vietnam. He came to us. He had Agent Orange. He had PTSD, and he was no longer able to manage to live independently. So he came in through the long-term care units and eventually progressed over to the hospice program. And we got to know him and his partner, his girlfriend, very, very well. And one of the things that you tend to do when you're in a hospice program is, and it's part of aging, is that you reflect on your life.
Yep.
You reminisce and you say, wow, this is what I did really well. This is what I wish I would have done a little differently. This is where I need to ask for forgiveness. This is where I get to say, thank you, I love you. So this couple I got to know very, very well. And he is in my heart. He loved to write poetry. He was a very sensitive, gentle soul. And when they had these conversations with him and his partner, she said, I would like to get married. I would like to be married to you. And he also had wanted to marry her.
Wow.
So it just was, kismet. It was meant to be.
How magic.
The stars aligned. And so we had this wonderful festive wedding on the unit. And she loves saying that her husband died versus her boyfriend died.
Yeah.
And she's officially a widow rather than just a leftover girlfriend.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Fabulous.
It was. And he was just a great guy. And if there are spirits living in the universe, or he's saying, You did good, Karen, in telling my story.
She did. She did.
So-
She absolutely did.
It's-
Well, and are those kinds of experiences universal in hospice units? It seems to me that that's kind of extraordinary for something that is perceived to be fairly anonymous care. I think, and
So I think this is the difference. If you
Yeah.
said to me, if I was a veteran, which I'm not, I would come to the Bedford VA for hospice care,
Yeah.
without a doubt, because I've worked all my life as a medical social worker for over 30 years, probably for the last 20 years in hospice care. And what's exceptional is the compassion, dedication, and earnestness in which we care for our veterans and our families. And the other piece is that because we have veterans that can age in place, veterans
Yeah.
that are highly service connected and start out in one of the long-term care units, and they age along the continuum of care.
Yeah.
What we talked about outside,
Yeah.
you know, they move along to palliative care and then to hospice care. We become their surrogate family, and we have the opportunity to listen. Listening is very powerful when you're storytelling.
Yes.
And when you get older, this is what you do, you tell your story.
They really wanted to know.
And we validate that, and then we empower them and say, is there anything else you would like to do? What's important to you? What matters the most to you at this time? And that's when I get my marching orders
Yeah.
or someone else, and then we try to see how we can make it happen.
But the other part is the continued support they have for each other all the way through. I remember there was a choking incident when we were doing a pancake breakfast for them. And so I ran out of the hall and gave the universal chokes. The staff not just came down quickly, they sprinted down there. But while we were waiting for the staff, one of the other patients got up and started the Heimlich going on. They were right there.
Well,
The
you know,
support for each other is phenomenal.
the veterans take care of each other.
Yep.
And one of the things that we do in our hospice program is we have, when actually a veteran, after he passes, he takes his last breath, the doctor will pronounce him. If the family's on the unit, we ask them if they would like to participate in the final salute. And it's where we have the flag over the gurney. All the staff join in, the family joins in, we play taps, and veterans come out of their
Yeah.
room and
Stand at
salute
attention. Yep.
him as he's being wheeled off the unit.
Yeah.
So it's the mindset that this was my brother, this is my brother. And it goes back to just taking care of one another. And we had one veteran that was also, he was a Vietnam veteran too, had Agent Orange, PTSD, and he lost many of his brothers died during Vietnam, and he had survivor's guilt. And he became the mayor on our unit. And you know,
it works that way.
and you know why he became the mayor? Because he took care of everyone on the unit.
Yep.
Yeah.
He took care of the other veterans. Him and his wife took care of the families. They were like Mr. and Mrs. Mayor. And it was heartwarming.
Yeah.
And do you know that recently he died, and I spoke to his wife, and she said, I received over 350 cards
Wow.
yeah.
from other veterans and families and staff that knew us at the Bedford VA. It's a testament to what he created,
Yep.
Yeah.
the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, the goodwill, and you could not believe the procession to salute him when he had died. And it was a tribute.
I'm kind of imagining it, Karen, and I'm thinking
Yeah.
it was pretty darn special.
Who was?
How many people are on the hospice unit?
So we have 14 beds.
Okay.
Only one room is the semi-private, all the rest are private rooms, private baths. But one of the other things that I want to allude to is that we have what's called a scattered beds model. And the scattered beds model are the long-term care units where we have veterans age in place. Those veterans have the opportunity to age in place and spend their final days. And we have a team, and I'm actually part of that team, that gives an adjunct layer of services. So many of the same things that we do on the hospice unit are able to be duplicated in the scattered beds model. So, you know, over the years before the unit was built, I would work building 78, I would work building 4, building 2, we would go to the GREC program. So this is really an atmosphere. It's a program of energy, of commitment, of serving that we want to penetrate throughout our long-term care units and not just solely on the hospice unit, because we are very dedicated to serving our veterans and families at end of life.
And people are just not plugged into the VA hospital. They take out on field trips. The bus went around and looked at all the Christmas decorations.
Eve. We saw that we waved.
They go
Laurel
out.
waved back.
They go out for lunch from time to time. Went to the Spinners game. Rotary brought them to the Spinners game. Yeah, there's a lot of good things they get involved with. Plus, when they go on those special trips, everybody treats them with the greatest respect that you can imagine.
Well, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
That's
And
right,
rightfully
rightfully so.
Yeah.
So what is an NVDA volunteer?
So we have that volunteer program with Laurel being Chief of Voluntary Services. So when you go through orientation, you can check off the boxes that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So one is the hospice program. So initially you will start out in the hospice program, which is primarily socialization, support. We had a volunteer this morning, and he'll take one of the veterans down for coffee. They have coffee in the canteen, the Patriots Cafe. They talk about sports. They talk about politics, which is very, never a dull moment.
Not these days.
Yeah. They'll talk about
whatever the kind of conversation you would have with anybody.
With anyone. And that's the goal. The goal is just not to focus on, oh, woe is me, I'm here. No, it's like, let's get out. If they want to go for a walk through the tunnels, they'll go through the tunnels. They'll go over to the golf course in warmer weather.
Yeah,
So
we brought one guy playing golf. He could drive it right out there. Yeah.
I had one veteran that he had ALS, also Vietnam era, and his favorite thing, and this is what we would do, we would have either a social work intern, a staff, a volunteer. He would say to me, I want a Starbucks dark roast coffee with lots of cream and 4 sugar.
And there is a Starbucks in there,
You've
right?
got Starbucks at the hospital? Well,
Yeah.
well, all right
See
then.
that?
I could go.
He would
I
put
could go.
I want scrambled eggs, toast with lots of butter, and my bacon well done. And that brought him quality of life. And he loved it. He loved it, and that was a way just to get him to smile and just to, you have to laugh, because laughter is food for the soul and the spirit, and laughter is wonderful, wonderful medicine. So we would do that for him, and then if he wanted to go over to the golf course, these are the things that the volunteers would do.
Take him down, the putting range, the whole deal. They're really good.
Then, as the hospice volunteer gets comfortable, they say, I'd like to be at the bedside of a dying veteran. That's a separate tier of volunteers. Some volunteers do both. Some just do hospice, and some just do NVDA. And that's being at the bedside of a dying veteran. No veteran dies alone. It's the ministry and
Right
presence
there.
of self.
You've said that 3 times, and I'm still going, what's NVDA?
No veteran dies alone. So it's an integral part,
Yeah,
because
right
I
there.
have had veterans that have no family, that have no friends, or they're estranged. And we recently had a veteran on another unit, and I knew him well. He aged in place, and he was wild and woolly, and he made all the women feel loved. And he just had the art. I mean, he was just a real salesman when it came to women. And
Good for him.
I enjoyed that. I mean, I thought,
Well, but a little flirtation is a fine thing, and especially if it brings a smile to somebody's face that doesn't smile that often.
So let me tell you what happened. This is classic. I mean, this tells you how many people he touched. So for him, we had no veteran dies alone, and he did not want to be alone, and he expressed that. So my mission was to see that he had volunteers if his family was not there at his bedside. And we did. We were able to have as many volunteers as possible. And that is the mission and heart and soul of the program, is that here is a veteran that has requested not to die alone, to have someone at his bedside, and to have a volunteer be there at his bedside. So I want to tell you what happened, because this is fascinating about who he was in his spirit. So I went over to occupational health, and I was talking to Denise, the occupational health nurse, and somehow I mentioned that we had an NVDA and who the veteran was, and so she said, I know someone that he really, really enjoyed, and that she really enjoyed him. So I went to check in on him one morning, and she was there, this woman. And I said, I'm so glad that you're here. And she said, yes. She said, you know why? He always made me feel pretty. He always made me feel loved. And she said, I'm not sure when that's going to happen again, so I want to come and thank him. And
Fabulous.
As much as it's called the VA hospital, the whole hospital thing evaporates, and it's a real family,
people
it's a
to
real
people.
home,
Yeah.
and you almost can't tell staff from family apart. It's just a nice working relationship. The other part that I really like when I was a volunteer is you kind of get caught up and emotionally attached to these things. The volunteers had like debriefing things just as volunteers alone that you really worked with us closely on, and that was phenomenal. I learned so much about that.
So I think it's very important because as much as death and dying is part of the life cycle, there is sadness, there is grief,
Yeah.
there is loss, there is bereavement.
Yeah.
And for those, the volunteers, it's very important to have the opportunity, just like a family, just like a friend, to
Yeah.
come together and celebrate
Yeah.
and honor. So many of them will attend, if it's their choice, to go to the wake,
yeah,
the
yeah.
funeral,
Funerals, yeah.
to
Yeah.
do something like that as a rite of passage. We also have a No Veteran Dies Alone support group, and
Yep.
that is specifically what we talk about, is that how do you feel, how do you cope, how do you acknowledge the grief, how do you move through the grief, what is it like, what is grief actually defined as, and how do you develop the resiliency of spirit to go back and continue to do the
Yeah,
work.
the strength in the whole deal.
That's the
Yeah.
resiliency's got to be
The resiliency.
key. Otherwise, you'd be just cycling people through the program.
Yeah.
Well, you experience compassion fatigue and burnout, and that's not our goal with our volunteers or our staff. Our goal is to normalize the process, and then how do we celebrate? How do we honor the loved one? We do that through our memorial services. We do that through our bereavement groups. We do that through our support groups. And then we do that even in our own morning meditation and reflection. And those are the hands-on tools that we give to one another.
Powerful tools, right.
Powerful tools. How do you nurture your spirit?
Yeah. I grew so much as a volunteer there. That's why I said it was the best job I ever had and didn't get paid, but I was paid big time with what I learned.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
here,
Yeah,
this
honestly, what
Yeah.
we're just chatting about now goes on every single day, every single minute while you're there at the VA hospital.
amen and blessed be.
Yeah.
So, are there things that we haven't talked about that you want to add and make sure that people know before we talk about how someone out in the community who sees this and isn't part of the continuum of care gets attached?
So a few other things that I'd like to highlight, which I think are integral to the program, is that we have community partners, and one of the other key community partners is the Disabled Limbless Vets, and that is run by a very nice man, Dominic Marcelino, who is a triple amputee from the Vietnam War, and he has adopted the hospice unit, and like just today he delivered 10 blankets for the veterans with all from the Air Force, from the Marine Corps. This is made by a special group of women. He brings us little K-Cups coffee, so that when the families want to have a coffee, they have K-Cups. We often would have, he would buy Market Basket gift cards, so at night after dinner, if the veterans wanted to have a cup of coffee with a donut, they could have the luxury of having that. One of the ways that we surpass what's an average hospice program is by doing these special things that create a life, that's far beyond an institutional setting.
Right, you're not just in a bed
waiting to die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the case here. We are going to live
Yeah.
until we're ready to die.
Right.
And we're going to do that by loving you, by nurturing you, by listening to you, asking you what matters the most, and then fulfilling that. So it's an action-centered program. We're just not sitting around idle.
Right.
We're working, we're very little busy bees, and the vets are the queen bees, or the king bees. However you want to call it. So I really want to, I have to mention, because it's the DAV Hospice Helpers, it's the DLV, these community partners, it's the hospice program, the David James Hospice Program, the No Veteran Dies Alone program, the volunteer phone coordinators who on the weekends are available by phone, from the nursing supervisor to say, we have an activation, can you get volunteers, can you get them to come out? They send texts, emails, calls, and these volunteers rally and come to the cause, and that that would not happen without dedicated, compassionate volunteers who really care.
But
Well,
the
so-
patient, and the patients are rallying too. They are as much of a volunteer as the volunteers are. It's
Well,
really
but I
part of
guess-
the action.
I
Yeah.
guess what I'm hearing, if
Yeah.
I'm catching it, is that you have patients, you have staff, and you have the community, and everybody is an equal partner.
That's why it
Yes.
takes a village.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's when you said early, it takes a village. It's not just one person, it's the synergy of the team
The whole
working
team
together.
work, right.
Everyone working together, everyone being respectful, everyone being veteran-centric. Our mission is to serve our veterans. Our mission is to have a good end of life. Our mission is to have a good death.
Yeah.
Our mission is to have the families have no regrets. Our mission is to have our families feel nurtured, loved, and supported as well, which segues into our next piece of that. We have a team. We have a psychologist. We have psychology students. I have a social work intern. We have chaplaincy that supports the family
Yeah.
during this time. We had a Coping with the Holiday Blues event, which was very successful. We had spouses, children, and siblings in different groups
Right.
to talk about the different types of issues and concerns that they may have, and how are they navigating the terrain of bereavement.
Yeah.
No one gives you a recipe or a cookbook like a parent and says, "Here, do this, you'll be fine."
A Google map.
Yeah, it's a long journey, one day at a time, and we want them to know that they're supported and that their voice is being heard as well, and they have resources. And we're there to help them
And
through
the
this time.
resources are for everyone.
Yes,
And
yes,
it's just-
yes.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a one. You know, it's funny. The VA kind of sits over there in Off Springs Road all by itself, and I've learned that there are some people say, "Well, I don't want to go to the VA hospital." No, you do want to be involved with the VA hospital. You're missing the boat if you're not part of the deal. Yeah.
I feel very strongly about
Yeah.
that, and we have had families come back to us, and we have surveys that are administered. We have like the #1 hospice program in the country.
Yes.
And it's because of these things that we do. That's what makes it so rewarding. I want to also speak about the Whole Health for Life curriculum. This is a curriculum that the VA is just very, very focused on passing on, teaching all of our veterans what matters to you and how can you empower yourself to have the kind of life that you want. So what we have done is we have taken that and we're embracing it in the hospice program, and we are doing Reiki. We have Reiki masters on the unit. We have the ability to do aromatherapy. We have the ability to do massage therapy. We have alternative types of medicine that it's just not so Western that take a pill, you'll feel better. We recently had our family council meeting and we rolled it out to our caregivers. And as a result, some of the women are interested in having a caregiver support group to learn more about it and how to really feel empowered to take care of self while experiencing their loved one in this very, very unique and very stressful time.
Yes.
We had in our area, actually he was a Rotarian in Concord, Tom Hudner, who was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, and they just named a ship after him.
Oh, I
and
saw
they just
that.
launched
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
He was at the VA hospital all the time. I used to see him there. Hey, Tom, and it was really good for him to be part of this whole group, and just because, it's not like you have to be a high-ranking person to be there. Everybody's equal there, and
There you
it's just
go.
a wonderful group to work with. Yeah.
Well, we may have run out of time.
I think we've run out of
We may
time.
have run over time, but that I'm absolutely fascinated. I came in tonight thinking, oh, all right. And it's been wonderful. Karen, thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for sharing your talents and capacities over at the VA. And we will look forward to hearing more about it. So the one piece, we do want to talk about Susan Williams, who's the admissions person, and Lori Durno, who helps people figure out eligibility, and Karen, who is the best spokesperson a hospital or a program could ever have. Would you like to talk? Never mind, we'll talk about that another day. No, your enthusiasm is infectious
Yes,
and
phenomenal.
clearly from the heart.
And for those that are watching Bedford Common, this is part of a whole series of videos that we're putting together to learn different sections. So segments of this will be involved in other videos that we put together with the VA through Bedford TV.
And the Bedford, she is speaking quite